Welcome to Infertility Stories,
a podcast about what it's really like to go through infertility while you're still in it.
Hosted by us, Miriam
and Elise,
two women who became friends through years of trying to conceive. Coming up on today's episode. But then when I went to look back on those test results with a little bit more insight into what kind of numbers I should be seeing and what kinds of words I should be looking for, 1 year later, what I saw was that my gynecological report showed soft signs of adenomyosis, which is one of the more advanced stages of endometriosis. And the doctor that we spoke to about these results didn't say anything to me about that in the consultation, and concluded that we have unexplained infertility.
Even though there were explanations visible in your test results. I felt like they were approaching me as if I were an object that they could just put somewhere, put a needle in, take a test, do an ultrasound, like poke in me, do whatever they want. All these things without acknowledging that I'm not just a body, but I'm a human being.
The way I was thinking to phrase it is trust and check. So yes, take the information from your medical provider, also check that information, and then vice versa. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Infertility Stories podcast. Today we are going to deep dive on the topic of navigating the medical system through infertility. If you have been trying to conceive for many months or years, then you will know just how much of a challenge it is to advocate for yourself with doctors, to navigate the medical system, and to deal with the very invasive medical tests that often come along with infertility. So let's start with talking to doctors. Elise, how has your experience been with talking to doctors about your infertility?
I've talked to many different doctors, and I've had some good experiences, but I've had a lot of challenging experiences as well. Situations where I felt like the doctor was not listening to me, where they were not acknowledging me, where they were just looking at the papers, not even seeing me, seeing the emotional side of things. Doctors just doing exams without actually even introducing themselves to me, so I was not even sure who I was talking to or who was doing a vaginal ultrasound at the moment. Doctors that gave me information that I knew was incorrect. And also, even recently, quite some doctors that told me to just continue trying and hope for the best, basically. So a lot of situations where I felt like I could not 100% connect to the doctor or trust the doctor or didn't 100% feel safe. And I want to say that nothing happened to me in the sense that I didn't have an actually unsafe experience or so. But still a lot of situations where I felt like something was off in how we were relating to each other or in the information or the support that I was getting or not getting. So yeah, doctors have been an important part of the process, but they have also been a challenging part of the process at times. And still, they are definitely the people that I need as well to know what the next steps are, to make decisions and to get the care and support that I need. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because the trust and level of safety that we feel with doctors can impact the success that we have in our fertility journey. If we're very fearful and we avoid medical support, then we can miss out on treatments and support that we need in order to be able to conceive. At the same time, if we go in completely trusting without any kind of emotional resiliency, we might get hurt as well by the medical language that gets used. I think is a particularly challenging aspect of navigating the medical system with infertility. Going through infertility is a highly emotional experience, and doctors don't always say the right thing, and medical language can almost be weaponized, or it can feel like it's weaponized when terms get used like incompetent uterus, geriatric pregnancy. Yeah, just really challenging language that gets used by doctors and the medical system to describe what we're going through, that it's a highly personal and emotional experience. And we've already talked about how just referring to things like pregnancy, loss, and miscarriages, just tissue, or, these other kind of very abstract terms can be really, really difficult.
Yeah, as if trying to disconnect the emotional part from the practical part. And yeah, I think often also we get diagnosed with things. We hear terminology. They tell us like labels that to us don't mean anything until afterwards, when we start Googling and going to forums and other places to find answers. So the information that we receive is often medical terminology, but that's a language we don't speak. I mean, we learn to speak it, but initially it doesn't really mean anything for us. So we need a translation, but the translation is not given to us. And I don't think intentionally. It is just, if you are in such a role, you might do it in your own job as well, where if you tell a friend or so about your job, about what you do, you might use words that don't mean anything to them. But these doctors, they continue to speak in this language to us, even though we are not part of the medical team. So it is not adjusted to actually giving us the information. Is just words, and there is no connection in that. It's just practical, factual, but not in a way that we understand or that is aligned with the emotional reality of it.
Yeah. And ultimately, there is a power dynamic between a patient and a doctor. A doctor holds a lot of power to assist, make referrals, give diagnoses. And so when you're going in as the patient, you're in a kind of imbalanced power dynamic where you're speaking to someone with authority and expertise, and they can use that for good or for ill. I'm just thinking of my experience kind of going to a doctor for the very first time, new family doctor that I'm starting up with, and having to explain from the beginning about how I've been struggling to conceive, I'm going through infertility, have all of these, medical diagnoses that I'm seeking. And then the doctor's like joking, like, you can have one of my kids, and it's like, it's just like they get to choose, right? They get to choose how they respond. And I don't think that they always realize how vulnerable a patient is when they're going to them with infertility, or especially like going through miscarriage and going to see a doctor. It's a highly, highly emotional and vulnerable state that you can be in at that time. So the smallest little words and actions can have the biggest impact. So
and they stay with you. Like you remember them for a long, long time afterwards.
Exactly. I think that that's one of the powers that doctors hold, is that because they are that authority figure, that expert figure, when they say something, their words really carry weight and have meaning for us. And those words will like resonate even years afterwards. Yeah. So that's definitely a part of the dynamic as well.
Definitely. And then there's also a time pressure, I think, because I think in most Western countries, there's just little time for each patient. And so the doctor has to be quick. And so even asking questions, like they might give you a diagnosis you might not understand, but there might not be the time to ask the questions you might want to ask. And at the same time, you might at that moment either feel vulnerable or stupid, or like there's not enough headspace to think about all the questions that you want to ask. But then you go home and be like, actually, I don't know what they were talking about. And there's just not the space to take the time to go into it and to actually receive the information and actually be in connection to each other.
Yeah. And then there's also the flip side of that horrifying moment where you realize that your doctor does not know what they are talking about and is saying things that are untrue, or just don't make any sense, or are stupid. And that is really difficult as well.
Yes, exactly. Because especially initially, I would say, but maybe at all times, we really hope to be able to trust our doctors, and we definitely start that way, I think, where you go to a doctor and you assume that they will know what's happening, they will give you a full diagnosis, they will know what testing needs to be done, they can interpret the tests, and they can give you the accurate next steps. Or if they can't, that can be the next step, to go to somebody they know can give the accurate next steps. And then in practice, I think probably everybody that I've talked to about infertility has had at least one experience, if not many, where they trust a doctor and then find out that they didn't give the full picture, they didn't interpret the results correctly, something was missing.
Yeah, exactly. On my side, I just had the experience of looking back at medical test results that I got last year, so over a year ago. I had to ask the clinic for a copy of my test results, first of all. They won't necessarily give those to you. It might be different depending on your location and how your medical system works, but for me, we weren't given a copy of our test results. I had to ask for them and I had to pay for them. And so that was the first piece of self-advocacy that I had to do, was just asking for a copy. And of course, when I received the results, I didn't know how to interpret them. I don't know how to read a medical test report. So I just kept a copy for my records. But then when I went to look back on those test results with a little bit more insight into what kind of numbers I should be seeing and what kinds of words I should be looking for, 1 year later, what I saw was that my gynecological report showed soft signs of adenomyosis, which is one of the more advanced stages of endometriosis. And the doctor that we spoke to about these results didn't say anything to me about that in the consultation, and concluded that we have unexplained infertility.
Even though there were explanations visible in your test results.
Yes. And not only that, when I went to look at the semen analysis and the results there, it showed poor morphology, so the sperm not having the right shape, and low motility, so the sperm's ability to swim was compromised as well. And again, nothing of that nature was mentioned in the consultation with the fertility clinic doctor. And when I asked if there was anything that we could do to improve our chances of conceiving, they said no, not really, healthy diet and exercise, when in fact both of these test result findings would change our trajectory and our treatment plan. There are things that can be done to work on both of these issues, and neither of them were mentioned.
So if you don't know that it's an issue, then obviously you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing that I want to say about in relation to this experience was how damaging I find the term unexplained infertility, because psychologically, to know deep down that something's wrong with you and that there's a reason why you are not getting pregnant, because pregnancy is a natural process. It should happen in a healthy couple if they're doing everything right. So to know that something's wrong, to know that there's a reason why, and then to be told that it's unexplained is psychologically so damaging, because you are just left with even more uncertainty and unclarity in an already very uncertain picture. And you're navigating uncertainty all the time with infertility. So that was, about a year of time lost to just trying to figure out answers to something that was already written down in a report and just hadn't been told to us. So this is where the experience that I've had and the experience I've heard of others as well leads me to conclude that you do have to become an expert in infertility to go through infertility. You have to do the research. You have to seek support. You cannot fully rely on the medical system to kind of transport you from your current infertility challenges to ending with a healthy pregnancy. If you rely on the medical system alone to do that for you, it will likely be a very long, very expensive, and very painful process. it will be those things already, but it'll be even longer, even more expensive, even more painful.
Without being necessary, like it could have been avoided. And that's the sad part.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Unnecessarily expensive, painful, and long.
And long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think TSH is a very similar thing. TSH is the thyroid hormone, and a lot of people are told that their TSH is all right because it's within range, whereas within range with TSH is like, I think, until 4.5 or so. And for fertility, actually, it needs to be between 1 and 2.5, just from the top of my head.
Yeah. I just spoke to someone yesterday who told me that she saw 30 different medical providers within a single year. And it turns out that she had deep infiltrating endometriosis, but none of those 30 providers in a whole year said anything to her about the possibility of endometriosis with all of the symptoms that she was presenting.
That's crazy. And every visit you have to each doctor, you have to explain again what's going on. They're going to either give you the same information you already know, or they're going to give you different information and you're not going to know which information to trust. And every time you have the invasive exams, the conversations you have to go through, it's just emotionally exhausting.
It's just, again, like neither of us want to advocate for distrust of the medical system necessarily.
No, not at all.
Because doctors and the medical system are absolutely necessary and they are experts in what they do. But I think that that's the point, isn't it? It's like, not all doctors are experts in everything.
What I've noticed is that also with endocrinologists or gynecologists, there's different levels.
Yes.
And some are specialized in something and some are general endocrinologists or general gynecologists. And that makes a very big difference how specialized they are. We assume that every endocrinologist is specialized in the same thing, and that's not true. And we just trust that, okay, this person is going to tell me and this person is going to have all the knowledge, but they don't. And that's part of the system, and that's kind of normal. That not every specialist is an expert in every expertise, but it's good to be aware of before you talk to somebody.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you go to that person, say it's like an OBGYN, and you're like, you are the expert in your field because you're an OBGYN.
Yeah.
But it turns out that, for example, with endometriosis, I needed to seek out a fellowship-trained gynecologist who focused specifically on endometriosis, because gynecologists who don't have that fellowship training and who aren't specialized are quite literally performing the wrong surgeries on people with endometriosis. And it's just very important to find the right kind of specialist, which is wild.
Yes. The problem is that it makes you so exhausted. Some of these things and some of the processes of trying to conceive could be made less exhausting, less expensive, and less long by having the right support, having the right doctors and people around you so that you get the right diagnosis as soon as possible.
Yeah, and you also have to schedule every single one of those 30 different appointments, which is one thing that I'm finding is just even working with a few different health providers at one time. Right now, a lot of my spare time is taken up with medical admin, especially now living in the US. I get so many medical bills. They all come through the mail. I have to pay them all separately, on top of chasing up providers to book appointments, do research, and try and find the right provider. I honestly feel like it is currently my part-time job just to do medical administration, and I know I'm not the only one dealing with that.
And if you have to do that while you also have a 9-to-5 job, usually you have to go during the day sometime to have these appointments. It's going to affect your work. It just takes a lot of your energy and resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think one of the sad things that you already mentioned a little bit is that even though we might not want this, you have to become the expert in your field and have to be able to know what information to trust and not, and to know when information is missing, what is lacking, and you have to really be on top of it. So when it comes to the physical part of the medical support, I have found that it's really invasive. And last year at some point I was really like, okay, after I had 2 surgeries and an ectopic pregnancy, I was like, okay, I don't want to see any doctor anymore for at least a couple of months. And recently I had a similar experience again, where I just saw so many doctors that I noticed that every time after I finished an appointment, I actually was very angry. And I was probably angry for multiple reasons, but one of the things was that I just felt that it's just very invasive, and I felt like the doctors were approaching me in a very physical way. That's not the right word to say it. In a very,
like,
I felt like they were, yeah, I felt like they were approaching me as if I were an object, basically, that they could just put somewhere, then like put a needle in, take a test, do whatever they want, do an ultrasound, like poke in me, like all these kind of things without acknowledging that I'm not just a body, but I'm a human being, and how invasive these tests are. I felt physically like my boundaries, like my physical boundaries, as in this is my body and this is where my skin is protecting me and making a boundary towards the outside world. It was repeatedly broken just by putting a needle into me, for example. And I would say most of the time, I don't really mind. I've gotten used to it. I don't even really mind if blood is drawn and they put a needle in my arm or so. And then still, after they do it repeatedly, I notice that, okay, now I need everybody to take a little bit of distance physically from me.
Yeah. And I think another aspect that is so challenging about that physically invasive process is, number one, it's mostly on the female side that the most invasive tests and procedures happen. There are some invasive procedures for men, but most of the time it's on the women's side. I remember just recently I had to start getting set up again with an IVF clinic here in the US after going through all of those tests back in Canada. And I just had so much resistance to, like, I cannot do another transvaginal ultrasound.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I've done so many transvaginal ultrasounds.
Yeah.
It is so invasive. You're literally, like, you know, putting the Doppler right inside your vagina. It's quite, it can be quite uncomfortable or painful. If you are someone with endometriosis, like, some of these tests can be extremely painful. And then on top of that, it's like, in this ultrasound type space, which we have the strongest association for ultrasounds with pregnancy ultrasounds and scans, where typically you're seeing a live baby and you're measuring them and being able to track their progress. I feel like one of the things that's so hard about infertility is we're going through all of these invasive procedures without the kind of quote unquote reward of seeing our baby or having a baby at the end of it. You know, hopefully that will be the very, very end result. But in the meantime, I go to these appointments and I'm just left with this empty feeling of having been kind of, like you say, prodded, poked, kind of violated in some way. And then there's just this emptiness of, like, for what? Like, I don't have my ultrasound picture in my hand at the end of it. I don't have, you know, like, positive news about progress towards a birth, like a due date or something like that. It's just emptiness that you're kind of left with. And so, yeah, it can be this really challenging combination of physical and emotional challenge combined. And I think you've really experienced that, Elisa, with the physicality of going through ectopic pregnancy, and all of that is like so physically demanding and emotionally challenging at the very same time.
Yes, and I think that's even before I ever got pregnant. I had that I was like, okay, I've had so many tests now, and I've had so many blood labs done and transvaginal ultrasounds done and all those things. And then having multiple miscarriages after each other in a year made that even worse. That pushed my limits, really.
Yeah. And sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this too, but it's like with my miscarriage, it was like my body was just like, no, like I'm not, like I physically couldn't get myself into the ultrasound to do the follow-up check. It was just like a hard no. And that's really difficult when if your body's resisting something that is kind of like a required next step for moving forward with your fertility treatment or whatnot, and you just like having to kind of support your nervous system and not push yourself too far into something that just you might need a break, you might need some time, but the last thing you want to do is take a break or take more time because it's already taken so much time.
Yeah, and just to know what level of discomfort, what level of feeling this is all right and you still want to do it, and when is it really the time that you stop and take a break or not go to a checkup.
Yeah.
And there's no right answer to that. I think it's just figuring it out, seeing how far you want to go.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's important to mention with all of this that there are so many resources available to help with that it doesn't have to all be through Google searches. I think finding the right people, it could be friends, family, people that you meet online in online groups, forums. I've mentioned Reddit was instrumental in me figuring out that I have endometriosis. I think relying on a network of people going through a similar experience is going to be really, really valuable. So it doesn't have to all be on you. There are existing communities and support networks. Another thing that I think is a potentially very powerful tool, although I say this with hesitancy around AI, but I do think that ChatGPT can be really supportive. Like if I had just run my test results that I got last year through ChatGPT, it would have explained a lot to me. I already ran my MRI results through ChatGPT and just asked ChatGPT to explain it to me, like explain in simple terms, what does this mean? And it was because I couldn't read that report on my own. I didn't know what any of the measurements meant, I don't have the medical training to understand that, but ChatGPT was able to explain it to me. I'm not saying that we should, again, we can't fully trust ChatGPT either, but I do think that there are these tools available that can make navigating things a lot easier.
Yeah.
And not having to do it all completely on our own because it is overwhelming.
I did the same when I had the ectopic pregnancy last year because they did an ultrasound and they gave me some information, but I understood only part of it. And then I got the document and I started to read it and reread it and ask ChatGPT. And it helped me understand what was actually happening because the doctor had kind of told me, but not really told me. So I only figured it out after trying to disentangle the information with ChatGPT. And I think there's reasons to not use AI at all. But if you want to use it, I think that's a good way to do it, is where you take some information, you discuss it with ChatGPT, see what it says, and use that again in your conversation with your doctor or with the specialist that you're going to, just to check if this is correct interpretation, if there's not something missing. And I think a good doctor would actually appreciate that as well, where you go and say, okay, I did some Googling, I did some research on my own. These are the things I found. What do you think? And I think that in that way, there can be a good cooperation actually between a specialist and us as patients.
The way I was thinking to phrase it is trust and check.
Yeah.
So yes, take the information from your medical provider, also check that information, and then vice versa. Take the information from ChatGPT or social media or Reddit or whatever, and then check that information with a medical provider as well. Like, check both ways. It's just always worth getting second opinions. And that's been one thing that's been really interesting for me recently, has been showing my same medical test results to multiple different medical experts and having them point out what they see in the report. And each person has said something or pulled out something different in the report. And that is very interesting to me because it just goes to show the power of getting multiple perspectives and opinions. And I think that's another point that I wanted to make, is that a lot of times we rely solely on medical doctors to treat infertility. But most of the time, what medical doctors are able to do is prescribe medication and or surgery and or medical procedures like egg retrieval, embryo transfer, etc. What they're less trained and able to do is look at holistic root cause issues and solve them through either dietary or lifestyle adjustments or supplementation or herbal remedies or things like acupuncture and other holistic treatments. So I think this is another area of infertility where we will be much more successful if we are working with multiple different practitioners and support teams outside of just medical doctors. So that could be a dietitian, it could be an acupuncturist, it could be a fertility coach, like whatever it is, just getting multiple perspectives outside of solely your IVF clinic or whatever it would be. Like those things are helpful, but they also need additional perspectives as well.
Yeah. And I would definitely add emotional, psychological support to that as well. And that can be a therapist, but it can also be other forms. Somebody is just there with you in the emotional part of it as well. Because I think like the doctors can give us the practical things, but there is so much emotion involved as well. And the choices that we make are depending on where we are at in our lives, in our mental process, how ready we are for something. There's an emotional load of things we're going through. And just to have support with that is very important. At the same time, I was thinking about this recently. Ideally, I would be able to work with all these different kinds of support. I did acupuncture in the past. I did work with a fertility coach in the past. I did go to doctors in the past. Like I did a lot of different things, but usually separately. And ideally, I would like combine them all together, have this real complete holistic support. And again, that's often a lot of money you need to pay for it as well. So it's not covered by health insurance. It's not covered by the system that we are in, even though it might be just as helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really a shame that holistic support that will actually help you, that should be accessible through the state, right? And it doesn't actually make financial sense because in some cases, people are going through multiple rounds of IVF that might be paid for by the state, but that could have been prevented or could have been more successful if that more holistic support was provided.
100%.
I also just want to say, I think navigating the medical system itself can also be incredibly challenging. It's not necessarily obvious who to go to, when to go to them, how to go to them, what kind of referral you need, what are the next steps, do I need to follow up? Is this treatment that people are talking about online even available in my country? Have I been given the right kind of test? Like I was given a referral for a transvaginal ultrasound when I actually needed an MRI. There are just so many challenges to navigating this system, and it's not obvious whatsoever. No one's going to lay it out for you. No one's going to give you like the exact steps that you need to follow, and no one's going to give you the exact right thing that you need. Again, it falls on you to figure it out, look into it, check up, follow up, research, just all of the above.
All of it. I recently had an example of this where I found out that if I want to have further assistance with infertility, I would have to go to a fertility clinic. That sounds maybe obvious based on the name, but the way I'd always understood it is you go to these fertility clinics if you are sure or like want to start the process of doing assisted reproduction or IVF or IUI or any of those options. I actually still don't know how it works, but some doctor told me that I should go there even if I don't want to do that, but just to get additional testing and get one doctor helping me go from step to step. Whereas at the same time, my partner called this clinic and he was like, okay, I want to make an appointment. And they said to him, well, your wife has been pregnant multiple times, so apparently you don't have any infertility issues, so this is not the place to go. And in the end, we have an appointment, so we'll just go there and we'll see what they can do. But it was interesting to me that after 3.5 years of infertility, I realized that no matter whether I want to do IVF or IUI or not, that actually might be the place where the specialists are that can help me in multiple scenarios where I thought they can only help me with assisted reproduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. You can only learn it and know it by doing it and going through it. I have come to that realization myself recently too. Like I couldn't have sped up this process anymore because I could only work with the information that I had at the time and only do the best with what I had at the time, which in a lot of cases was inadequate, but it's all I had. So it's all I could work with. And that is just one of the really challenging parts of like you just have to go through it, unfortunately.
Totally.
So we want to kind of wrap up this episode just by talking about what are our key takeaways, learnings, and I suppose recommendations for navigating the medical system. I think the first thing that I hope has come across in this episode is that it's become very apparent to both of us that it's absolutely imperative to advocate for yourself, to research, to persevere, to follow up, to check everything, and get copies of all of your medical records as well. So it's not about being distrustful of providers or distrustful of the internet per se, but also just about double checking and getting multiple perspectives, and also trusting your gut. If you feel that something is wrong, it doesn't make sense, it's not adding up, that's probably because it doesn't, and it's worth following up on.
Yes. Continue to research and learn, ask for information, ask follow-up questions, ask advice, look for experts. You just have to do it. You have to do it for yourself. Even though it's unfair and it shouldn't be this way, this is, I think, in many cases necessary. I just wanted to stress, get support. I wish I had gotten support earlier. I wish I had gotten more support. Get support of people you trust. And that can be medical professionals, that can be alternative healthcare professionals, that can be friends and family as well. Like, it can be all sorts of people, but get the support. Make sure that you are not alone and that it's indeed, like, it's not just you trying to figure out based on all the information, and that can be an overload and it can be overwhelming, but also to find the people that can help you figure out what is actually relevant and make the translation towards your situation, because it is good if there's somebody you can rely on, so you don't have to completely treat yourself, because being your own professional and your own healthcare provider is not, like, you're too close to it as well. So you need somebody that can help you make decisions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's too much of a burden to put on yourself to carry everything alone. No one can carry all of that. And also, yeah, just don't suffer in silence as well. I think a lot of infertility is very invisible. People don't know what's going on. But the more I found that the more that I share, the more resources open up and make themselves available. Yes, people will give you unsolicited bad advice, but they might also provide good suggestions and point you in the right direction too. Like, even just yesterday, just mentioning to someone that I was getting surgery for endometriosis led them to connect me with someone who is really well researched and well educated on the subject, and that wouldn't have happened if I had just kept quiet and not said anything. So, and then what could make the physicality of it easier as well? I think reading your body and knowing what your limits are, like, that's important. And then what are all the things that you're not going to get from a doctor, and how can you give them to yourself and seek them out? So whether that's emotional or psychological support or additional providers, what else do you need that a doctor alone can't do for you? One thing that I've been thinking about recently is, right now for me, having children is the most important number one priority and goal in my life. And therefore, I'm thinking, how can I really resource that and not minimize it or put it away? If I'm really at the point where I am struggling to see what my role in life is if I don't succeed in being able to get pregnant, then why not make it my number one priority and really, really go all in? I don't know if people listening might have that experience of kind of putting that need aside a little bit, maybe saying like, oh, well, I don't want to put money towards this, or I don't want to put time towards this, whatever it is.
Or once this happens, then I will do it.
Delaying, yeah, exactly. Only if it gets really, really bad will I do this thing. It's like, actually, no, do it now, because if it is your number one thing, if like me, it's your most important priority, then make it a priority and really push for it. Yeah. Any concluding thoughts, Elisa?
Well, maybe I'll add it here. I was recently listening to a podcast episode with Alan Alda, if I say his name correctly, and it reminded me so much of this process because he was speaking about the doctors and how they often talk but not communicate. He expressed so well and so nicely the difference between actually connecting and communicating over just saying things in a medical environment. So instead of just saying a diagnosis or just giving information, actually connecting. And for me, it was very helpful to listen to that because it helped me again acknowledge that what I'm experiencing when I'm in these medical situations is valid and it's not just me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Elisa. It sounds, important just to validate that it's not all in your head. It's not just you. It's a real thing. Other people experience this and you are not alone.
Exactly.
So thank you for listening, everyone. We hope that this episode was helpful for you. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. And until then, we really hope that you get all of the support and resources that you need to move forward in your journey. And we look forward to hearing from you as well. So feel free to leave a comment or send us a message on Instagram. If we can be that resource for you, then we are more than happy to do that.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Bye for now.
Bye for now. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and share this podcast with a friend who is going through infertility. If you have any questions or would like to share your story on a future episode, please find us on Substack and Instagram. The links will be in the show notes. See you in 2 weeks.